Greetings and welcome to another edition of Political Empire. I'm your host, Kim Pearsall with the Press Enterprise and PE.com. We're going to be talking about the San Jacinto corruption trial, which has been a long time coming, and also the Southwest direction, essentially what direction Riverside County's Southwest district is headed politically. So first, the San Jacinto trial. Opening statements were supposed to begin this week in the San Jacinto corruption case that began 3 years ago, but one of two individuals who hadn't pled guilty decided to on Tuesday. James Potts, the city's former council member and city treasurer, pleaded guilty to 2 misdemeanors and will get 3 years probation and 60 hours of weekend detention. The probe had alleged widespread corruption, including bribery and money laundering among city council members and developers. 7 of the original 9 indicted had already pleaded guilty before Potts and were sentenced. The trial for Robert Osborne, though, a developer, is expected to begin in late January. And now we're going to talk about Southwest Riverside County. While the rest of the Inland Empire appears to be turning from a GOP stronghold to a little more liberal friendly, the Southwest remains steadfast. Their assembly race pitted 2 Republicans against each other, for example. And elections in that region of Riverside County also resulted in a ban on red light cameras in one city and a tax hike to fund park improvements in another. Here to tell us more is Southwest reporter John Hill. John, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Kim. No problem.
Fantastic. So first, talk to us about the red light camera ban. You've been on the show before to tell us a little bit about what was leading up to the election and the ballot measure. The residents who proposed this ballot measure wanted the red light cameras removed in Murrieta, and it looks like they succeeded. So what happens next?
Yeah, they succeeded, as most of these camera bans, once they get to the voters, go through, and Murrieta's was no different. What happens next is the cameras are most likely going to come down unless something changes, and what could change is the voter initiative could be challenged in court. The initiative was challenged before the election, and unsuccessfully, the Court of Appeals ruled that the ballot measure could go forward. But there is some question about its constitutionality. So the camera company could challenge the vote.
Interesting. Well, obviously, you'll keep an eye on that one and let us know what happens there. But for the folks who were supporting that ballot measure, it was pretty good news in their election. And also in the election, there was a tight assembly race. There were many in the Inland Empire. This one pitted Melissa Melendez against Phil Pauley, and Melissa Melendez narrowly won. What might the representation do for the Southwest area? Granted, both of these candidates were Republican candidates running for a Southwest Assembly seat. What do you think happens next there?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, they were both Republicans. This was the one area where we stayed conservative, stayed Republican. The Assembly district is a new district. It was carved up in the redistricting. Most of the area was represented by Kevin Jeffries, who was termed out. And so now Melissa Melendez looks like she has won. Pauley conceded to her, even though the vote is still going on, but it looks like she's won. So she's a councilwoman in Lake Elsinore right now, and last night she had her final meeting, and she's going to move on. Both candidates had very similar thoughts and feelings on things. They were both very anti-tax. They both opposed Prop 30. And very conservative, and I think Southwest Riverside County is probably going to have roughly the same sort of representation as they had with Kevin Jeffries.
It's interesting that you mentioned that they're anti-tax. This Measure Z, though, this was a measure in Wildomar that would raise landowners' taxes by about $28 annually, but net some $170,000 or so to maintain the city's park, and that passed. Why was the money necessary to maintain these parks?
Yeah, well, here's the one time where the voters did approve a tax and maybe went against the sort of conservative leanings. This has been going on in Wildomar for years and years now, even before Wildomar was a city, this issue of how to fund parks. There have been a few attempts at getting a tax on the ballot. A couple of them failed. One succeeded and then was challenged in court, basically by a resident who said that the mechanism basically for how it was set up was wrong, and the courts agreed with him. And so the city has been fighting to get a tax back on the books for a couple of years now. Wildamar's got 3 parks, and since the tax was taken off the books, 2 of them have closed. The biggest one, Martin O'Brien Park, has been kept open basically only through the sweat and tears of local people who have kind of banded together to mow the grass and raise money for the lights and water and that sort of thing. So it looks like the parks are going to come back open with that cash that this tax is going to raise.
Fantastic. Well, John, thanks so much for the update. No red light cameras anymore, at least according to the election results. And we're going to have cleaner parks in that area, Wildemar. And now we have a new assembly district as well with Melissa Melendez representing them. So, John, thanks again so much for joining us today for Political Empire. And thank you for watching yet another edition of Political Empire. We'll see you next week.